Hi, believe it or not, we live in an age where everything either is or comes in the form of a pod. For example, I'm speaking to you now while wearing a pair of AirPods, while listening to a podcast, all the while enjoying a delicious mug of coffee which I brewed using, you guessed it, a Tide Pod. That is very strong. Anyways, all of that brings us on to today's video, the WestJet pods. My day starts off in Vancouver, from where I'll take a WestJet 737 to Calgary. Now, I didn't really film this leg of the trip, having slept through most of it. Instead, we'll pick it up from Calgary, which is actually WestJet's home and one of its major hubs. The airport here is creatively named Calgary International Airport, and much like other large Canadian thoroughfares, is split into domestic, international, and transborder sections. I'll be taking one of the airline's one-year-old 787-9 Dreamliners over the prairies and home to Toronto, a flight of 1,670 miles lasting 3.5 hours. Alright, I'm here at the B gates in the domestic terminal at Calgary. I didn't check in here, I came in from Vancouver just now, so we're not going to go through the whole check-in process. Instead, we're going to go straight to the plane, and wow, it is kind of crowded today. It's 8:35 in the morning, there's a lot of people here. While it was surprisingly busy, there were of course still COVID restrictions in place. As far as I could tell, everyone was doing a good job of wearing a face covering, and the over-the-top golf buggy people mover system thing was offline. I still don't really understand the point of this. On the subject of closed, the WestJet Contract Lounge was not open, and there's also no news on the first of WestJet's own lounges, which was previously slated to begin operations this summer. And behind me, behind this window, is the plane that'll be taking me to Toronto. This is one of 10 eventual Boeing 787-9 Dreamliners that are set to make up the fleet. The plane features a 3-cabin layout and is the first in the airline to introduce a lie-flat seat in its business class product. One can say then that this heralds in a new age for the Albertan airline, a departure from its low-cost origins, and a transition into a full-service carrier. So then, that of course means going head-to-head with Air Canada, who just so happened to have their version of the exact same plane parked ominously behind this one, looking over its shoulder literally as the company does so metaphorically. Anywho, knowing that I was coming, the station manager for WestJet in Calgary actually came down to greet me in person and let me board the plane well ahead of everyone else, even personally introducing me to the crew. Hi there. Yes, it is. Travis?
Would you like a cleansing wipe for your seat area?
Please, thank you so much. Hi there, good morning. While I was a little overwhelmed and very much flattered with the reception, I did suspect that the flight attendants were being extra nice to me since they knew I was making this video, rendering my evaluation of the surface not entirely objective. Alas, I may have fell victim to my own tepid success. Perfect, thank you so much, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Travis, right?
Yes.
Okay, good morning to you. On the upside, however, I had plenty of time to film the cabin. The business cabin is smaller than what you would expect on this type of aircraft, as it shares a space between the first two set of doors with the premium economy cabin just behind it, so there are only 4 rows of seats in a 1-2-1 layout. You can tell that WestJet really did put quite a bit of effort into their interior design, incorporating their brand of blues and teals into the upholstery and finishes in such a way as to not cheapen the product with bombastic colors, but rather with a more subdued and sophisticated palette, maintaining its own very unique identity. I really do think that this is one of the best looking interiors in any business cabin. It feels cozy, intimate, and it has a sense of personality. Anyways, here's my seat for today, 3K. But before an exhaustive seat tour is due, and since I have the plane to myself a bit longer, let's go check out the other cabins. This is Premium Economy, situated just behind Business. There are 4 rows of these Collins Aerospace MiQ business seats laid out in a 2-3-2 configuration, and just about half the world's airlines use these seats for Premium Economy, but that's hardly a surprise considering that they offer really good recline, leg rests, and all the other modern amenities. However, just like all the other airlines, there is one fatal flaw. the lack of cup holders. The economy cabin takes up most of the aircraft and comes in the standard 333 format. This is, in my opinion, the highlight of this plane. There's plenty of legroom, individual IFEs, charging options, and all the other comforts you'd expect from a modern long-haul aircraft. The seats are upholstered to the same level of quality and attention to detail as the premium cabins, making this a leap ahead of the airline's main cabin offerings on its older jets. It also makes it very competitive against its main competitor, whose economy seats are arguably not as nice as this one. But do take my word with a grain of salt because it has been quite a while since I was in either airline's economy cabins. Alright, so this is my seat for the next 3.5-ish hours. This is 3 kilo, it's pretty nice. I think the wing view is... it's alright, but you know what? Not gonna complain. Instead, let's do a comprehensive seat tour, starting off as always with the IFE. Big, beautiful, and blue. We'll have a closer look at it later. For now, we're more interested with the legroom situation. There's not a whole lot to get in the way of your appendages, apart from maybe the table mechanism. Here's a plaque. Not exactly sure why I'm showing you it, but the table comes out like this and it folds open to give you more space. The surface is sturdy and it can also be fixed to various positions, as past me shall clumsily demonstrate. Some people have a problem with the fact that the table doesn't sit flush under the screen, but I don't think it's a big deal. What is a big deal, however, is this massive cubby space home to an ocean of blue, in which you will find your headphone ports, USB Type-A charge port, touchscreen media controller, we'll revisit this later, and of course the universal power outlet. Directly behind this is another smaller compartment. I'd recommend putting the contents of your pocket in here, at least they get lost in the seat mechanism. Oh, and there's also a small mirror for those of us vain and narcissistic enough to have a YouTube channel. Here's a lovely piece of art that doubles as the literature stand, although it would look nicer if they still had in-flight magazines. These days, it's just a regurgitation receptacle and a safety card. Here's a dimmable reading light. That is dimmable. The seat itself features a black leather headrest, a shoulder strap addition to the seatbelt, and a very snazzy design in the backrest. Both armrests are padded with a soft touch leather, and directly above this one is the touchscreen panel for your seat controls. In addition to lighting options, the seat back and leg rest can be individually moved and the lumbar support adjusted. Back over here on the aisle side is the larger armrest that opens up to reveal a cubby space that is home to the noise-canceling headphones. It's a pleasant surprise that they still provide these. Nevertheless, we'll have a closer look at them later. The armrest also comes up, but in its lowered position it allows you to get out of your seat even with the tray table deployed. Okay, tying up a few loose ends, there is a tiny coat hook, probably only meant for ants. And under the side console is another small cubby hole. Individual air vents are an option not selected by WestJet, which meant it was quite hot in the cabin during boarding. Overall though, these pods are well designed and feel very private, accomplished by a combination of the suite enclosures and the offset positioning of the seats themselves. But don't worry, if you are traveling with someone, you can still open the divider between the middle seats and close them, obviously, if you don't want to talk to that person anymore. As we set off, I can't help but to be impressed with WestJet's cabin. It's been a year since I've last been in this seat, and in that time, my memories of it have been blurred by countless flights on Air Canada's equivalent. And as we taxi past the omnipresent reminder of this plane's direct competitor, it's good to remind ourselves that we're lucky here in Canada to have two major airlines. The competition ultimately means better value for us consumers. So in that regard, let's see how David stacks up to Goliath, especially since both carriers are beginning to reintroduce onboard service. past 10,000 feet, the Wi-Fi became available. It's called WestJet Connect, and it's pretty easy to do just that, either by going to their app and then the corresponding tab, or by going to the address on the screen with your browser. Once it loads, you'll have quite a few options, from an hour of free messaging to full flight packages. There are no data limits, but after a certain amount of bandwidth, you are throttled. Even then though, the speeds were decent. There wasn't much to see out the window, so instead, let's go check out the toilets. There's one lavatory forward of the business cabin and two more just behind premium economy. The one in front was slightly smaller, and on my flight was closed to passengers to limit foot traffic. Otherwise, it's a very standard Dreamliner bathroom, nothing too fancy here. The two bathrooms further back were slightly roomier, but don't expect to be able to throw any parties in here or anything. These facilities were cleaned after each use. Disregard the water in the sink, that was me. And the foaming hand soap from the Rocky Mountain Soap Company smelled surprisingly fresh. There was another assortment of lotions and gels, but I wouldn't risk using these during plague season. WestJet didn't go for windows in these bathrooms, but thankfully they did opt for a toilet. It came in white and was void of pee stains. And if you pay attention, you'll notice that the wallpaper also features their logo. But on a serious note, and I suspect not everyone knows this, these 787 bathroom flushes can be motion activated, so you don't have to touch it. Now, in lieu of a full meal, I figured that there would be at least a snack on board, and I wasn't disappointed. Upon returning to my seat, I found this box of sustenance waiting for me. It wasn't anything remarkable, but at any rate, it beats the water and pretzels I would have gotten had I flown this route a month earlier. The highlight was a cheese croissant sandwich, which tasted better than it looked. Also, the apple slices were a healthy welcome. And better yet, they even had alcohol on this flight. I went for a beer, partly because I had a mild case of a hangover, but also because the wines they had on board were the cheap individually bottled economy stuff, and I already made that mistake on Air Canada the week before. The austere food service is of course due to the coronavirus. Normally on this route, you'd receive a starter, main course, and a dessert, with a few options to choose from for your entree. On domestic routes, everything would come on a tray, plated in very stylish crockery, but these days expectations are a little lower, and I was just happy to have something other than dough and salt to eat, and pleb juice to drink. Now, at this point in the flight, I had wanted to go over the entertainment system, but the prevailing winds had other ideas. Since the violent shaking of the plane often helps me sleep, I thought I would use this time to check out the bed. This being the Super Diamond seat, it of course reclines to a fully flat position. The armrest lowers to provide ample room for your chest and shoulders so that you can toss and turn to your lumbar's desire. I come in at 181 centimeters tall, or if you come from a country whose leader struggles daily with their hair, 5'11", and I had a couple of inches to spare. Footroom was good, but the stowage of the tray table does mean that it's slightly impeded with the room for your thighs, especially when sleeping on your side. In a reclined position, you are cocooned by the walls of the pod, and it really is very private. Even people walking along the aisle won't be able to see into your personal enclosure. It was a little disappointing to find out that the pillows and blankets were not provided on this flight. It made sense, but the plush WestJet blanket is one of the nicest out there. I almost wanted to steal it last time. You didn't hear me say that though. Anyways, the seat is also of course infinitely adjustable, so to that end it's very easy to find the perfect lounging position to get comfortable in, read a book, and ride out the bumps. Speaking of which, at this point in the flight at 37,000 feet, it did get a little bumpy. And when I say a little, I mean the heaviest turbulence I've experienced in a while. I couldn't really record it since my camera lens would just smash into the window every time I tried, so instead, let me leverage the power of cutting-edge computer simulation to illustrate my point. Anyways, after about 30 minutes of mild discomfort, countless occurrences of things falling on the ground, and a middle-aged lady having a panic attack, things finally calmed down enough for me to check out the IFE. This is WestJet's first foray into a built-in system, since the entertainment is streamed through Wi-Fi on all their other types of planes. But given their virgin attempt, it did pack quite a lot of content, all of which is presented intuitively with a beautiful interface and graphics. There were a good number of movies, both old and new, as well as TV shows. There is a clear inclination towards family-friendly content, but also a good variety of documentaries and travel shows. Though it did stutter at times, the new hardware meant that most interactions were responsive. The settings menu even allows you to control some elements of your seat, call the flight attendants, and dim the windows. FlightPath 3D are the purveyors of the in-flight map, and exactly as the name suggests, it features a three-dimensional flight map complete with an exaggerated representation of the aircraft in a fully interactive, non-exaggerated representation of the world. However, I was a little disappointed to find no outboard cameras. It just seemed like something WestJet wouldn't omit. Anyhow, the media remote is the ubiquitous touchscreen Panasonic model everyone's seen by now. If you haven't, this is what it looks like. Running WestJet software, you can follow the in-flight map on the handset or watch content on it. However, you can't play media on the handset while simultaneously doing so on the main screen. I don't know why you would want to, but I'm here to answer the ifs and not the whys. Finally, let's have a peek at the headphones. They felt sturdy and the padding was soft. They also sounded pretty good but weren't of the over-ear variety, rather they sat on your ears. Thus, for longer periods of use, and especially if you have a head as big as mine, they will get uncomfortable. That's why I still prefer my QC35s. With an hour left in the flight, I didn't bother starting a movie, instead opting to go on Instagram like the vapid millennial I am. Before we began our descent, another assortment of snacks was handed out. It was a little bizarre that they came in a brown paper bag, almost like they were illicit goods, but I couldn't argue with the contents. It then got quite bumpy again, so I settled back into my book, distracted by the views out the windows and my thoughts about this flight. WestJet is Canada's second largest airline, and in some ways, it falls a little bit behind Air Canada when it comes to its business class products. On the ground, the check-in isn't as smooth, there's no concierge service to sort you out when you're in trouble, the lounges, even when they were open, were inconsistent at best, and they can't leverage the benefits of being in an alliance like AC can with Star Alliance. So, if you're an international frequent flyer, the choice between the two is pretty clear. Yet, none of these shortcomings are the airline's intention, and they definitely don't intend to keep it that way. If anything, the fact that they now have a proper business class at all is a sign that in times to come, they'll fill in all these gaps, and once and for all, leave behind their low-cost origins. But in the meantime, there is a segment of the market that WestJet's Dreamliner does really well in, and that would be holiday goers, honeymooners, and other one-off splurges. The onboard service, especially on the soon-to-be reintroduced international routes, are on par with all the other major airlines, but are often priced very competitively. The staff on my flight were delightful, giving me more attention than perhaps I would have liked, but I can't really speak to the crew on this flight. Like I said, they knew I was coming and making a video. I can say, however, that in my experience flying WestJet, when you're on one of their Dreamliners, the crew are almost always super excited. I guess the novelty of a brand new state-of-the-art widebody isn't lost on the flight attendants, and compared to even just a year ago, the level of service has become much more professional in the premium cabins. One last thing to note, I was only one of 2 paying passengers in the business cabin. The rest of the seats were filled with commuting flight attendants, pilots, and mostly passengers upgraded from the rear cabins. WestJet is very generous with their upgrades and seldom leaves the premium cabins empty if they can help it. It would suck if you wanted the cabin to yourself, but we Canadians won't admit to being that selfish. At the end of the day, if you can find a good deal, a redemption, an upgrade, or whatever reason you need to buy a ticket, WestJet's business class pods are definitely worth it. The seats are comfortable, the service will not disappoint, and the exceedingly friendly crew are sure to make it a very memorable experience. It seems to get cancelled on me every time I try, but I'll still endeavor to get on this plane for an international flight sometime. But until then, and until the next time, safe travels.